Hi, folks. Well, well. Today we are supposed to continue with what we have already started with in the previous lecture, be it a lecture or whatever you try to call it. We've arrived at a point where we were discussing the reasons for Plato's rejection of both poetry and poets. And you remember we have already divided the reasons fall into two basic categories. They are either epistemological or regards the aesthetic. We said that according to Plato, poetry appeals to a lower faculty, human individual, that is emotions. And this definitely brings us to the idea Plato, as a philosopher, used to be very much preoccupied with the stability of his own society, because under the influence of poetry, an individual may provoke certain reactions, have a very negative influence on individuals. It may lead them to some sort of an insurrection. Moreover, Plato is of the idea that the stories that are supposed to be narrated to children should be morally edifying. That صبغة تهذيبية وأخلاقية. If we examine this idea, definitely it leads us to arrive at a basic conclusion, which is the genealogical origin of came to be called Raqaba. No state ever will be available without having some sort of to safeguard its own citizens from other influences, foreign, domestic, or otherwise. And I don't like to get you involved in as many details as possible. What censorship is supposed to be, how it works, and types of censorship, because again, this is a very thorny topic. But I'd like to say that censorship, according to famous psychoanalyst Sigmund Freud, starts with the individual self, which goes under the rubric of what he calls or labels as the pseudo ego, that is to say, an individual or a citizen cannot do whatever he likes and whenever he likes. There are certain inhibiting factors that deter him or her from doing what he likes. So to be an ordinary citizen, he or she should internalize those values that are pervasive in his or her society. Internalization of these values amount definitely what we normally call the conscience, ضمير. And the idea goes on as censorship is concerned, which would be applicable to films, to broadcasting, to the television, and so on and so forth. Unfortunately, I don't have the time, nor is there a room for citing certain examples as far as censorship is concerned. But keep it in mind that a society could not survive without having some sort of censorship. Anyhow, so by and large, we have arrived at the idea that a Plato philosopher is morally oriented thinker. On the basis of his ideas, there are a lot of things that have developed. Okay, let us look at page 22 at the top of the page, where we are going to wrap up. نجمل to wrap up what we have already discussed, by directly linking politics and literature in a moral and reasoned worldview. Worldview is a literal translation of a German term which is called or labeled as Weltschauung, and the plural of it, Weltschauung, الرؤية إلى العالم. Different as it is from the world picture. الرؤية للعالم تختلف عن ما يسمى بصورة العالم. Simply because, the picture of the world is comparatively very static. I don't like to get you involved in ridiculous details as far as we're concerned, because it is purely sociological term that was used by the German sociologist Karl Mannheim. And later on, it develops and taken up by so many thinkers, such as Lukács, famous Hungarian critic, and then it traveled to France, which was again adopted and taken up by a famous critic, French critic. So let us continue. Plato and his academy founded a complex theory of literary criticism that initiated the debate still ongoing on. That is to say, across the years, across the centuries, the ideas that have been advocated or articulated by Plato in his dialogues are still very sticky points. It has provoked a lot of debates and discussions on the value. By the way, we have got so many types of value. We've got the linguistic value. I suppose that you have already come across the term linguistic value. That is to say, the value of a linguistic item does not arise from the item itself, but its relationship along the linguistic chain. This is what's meant by value. In economics, we've got two types of value. We've got value of exchange and utilitarian value. I don't like to get involved in this. Nature and the worth of the artist and literature itself. The function and value of literature. What can literature do? What functions can literature fulfill in its own society, apart from the idea that politics infiltrates into every aspect of literature, and politics is based on seizing or power, recanting power, and so on and so forth, getting along with the idea that power is everywhere. So no matter how much you try to absolve yourself of any sort of political responsibility, politics is there. Being through with those ideas, we take a step forward by dealing with another figure not less significant than Plato, that is Aristotle. I would suppose, I hope that I'm not be wrong, that you have already been introduced to some sketchy ideas as far as Aristotle's definition or conceptualization of a tragedy in your secondary study. But anyhow, let us have some ideas. By the way, Aristotle's works have already been translated into Arabic, what is called أيام المأمون. أبو حيان القياني وأبو حنين بن إسحاق ترجموا الفكر اليوناني إلى الفكر العربي، وبالتالي أصبح لدينا ما يعرف بالأكلتوريشن، المثاقفة أو التلاقح الفكري بين الثقافة اليونانية والثقافة العربية. وبالتالي علينا we owe a very great debt to the نحن لازلنا ندين دينا كبيرا إلى الأقليات، وعلى رأسهم لأنهم قدموا كبيرة إلى الثقافة العربية، ابتداء من أينشتاين الرملي والأخوة سيركيس وما إلى ذلك، والأقليات ساهمت إسهاما فاعلا في الثقافة. لا أريد الخوض في هذه التفاصيل. هناك دراسة أنثروبولوجية رائعة عن الأقليات في العراق لأستاذ الأنثروبولوجيا في بغداد، في جامعة بغداد، يمكن العثور عليها والبحث إذا ما أريد الخوض في تفاصيل. So, well, and you know, Aristotle is very much famous for his own book, Poetics, ما يسمى بالشعرية، وأحيانا يترجم بالبطيقة، وأحيانا يترجم بالشعر. هكذا هو دين الترجمة في الوطن العربي. لا there is no consensus، لا يوجد إجماع أحيانا على ترجمة بعض المفاهيم، وبالتالي هذه تقود إلى ما يمكن أن نصطلح عليه يعني الفوضى المصطلحية، ولا أريد بتفاصيل. Let us stick with. He says, where a literary criticism concerned with morality began with Plato. We have already discussed the idea that, Plato's ideas are basically guided by the morality he boosts up or he cherishes a lot. Its emphasis on the elements of which work is composed began with Plato's famous pupil. What constitutes a literary work? What are the basic elements? Okay? If Plato is morally oriented, Aristotle is formalistically oriented. العمل الأدبي. Rejecting some of Plato's beliefs about the nature of reality, Aristotle opts for a detailed investigation of the material world. By the way, for those who are interested, you can find a very comprehensive chapter on Aristotle and how he has managed to refute the accusations that have been leveled by Plato against poetry and poets in David Deutsch's book, Approaches to Literature. مقاربات إلى الأدب. وسبق أن ترجم هذا الكتاب المهم إلى العربية، ترجمه حسين عباس نجم تحت عنوان آخر، وهذا هو دين الترجمة مع هي النقد الأدبي ومناهجه الحديثة. For those who are interested, they should have some ideas about those two translators. Translators. I don't like to burden you with these ideas. Anyhow, so as far as Plato is concerned, he was very much morally oriented, whereas Aristotle is radically different from on master. He is going to be concerned with the basic elements constituting the work. We are going to see, and okay. If Plato is famous for the establishment of the foundation of what is called the academia or academy, famous is having his own school, Lyceum. It is still available in the Egyptian colloquial Arabic. تخرجت في الليسيه. Okay, so it is of Greek origin. And he is also famous for what is called peripetia, those philosophers who tended to teach their students or pupils while they are walking. هناك مجموعة من الفلاسفة في اليونان يعرفون بالمشائين. And this is what is missing in our background here, that we have no idea whatsoever as far as Plato. Okay. So what we are going to be concerned with is Aristotle's answers to Plato's accusations, how he has managed to refute his master's ideas as far as poetry and poets, or literature in large, or art in large. Right into the middle of page 22, applying his scientific methods of investigation to the study of literature. The question that arises here is that what makes a science into a science? Because I'm sure that you have already come across the definition of linguistics where it is defined as the scientific study of language. So the question here, what makes a science into a science and what differences there are between being scientific and scientistic. ما الفرق بين العلمي والعلمي? Try to search for the answer. I mean, for the answers to these questions of your own interest as a student. Science has got its own methods and its own aspects or traits. So when Aristotle applied his scientific method to analyze to literature in general, that is to say, what Aristotle has done is that he has surveyed Greek literature, and out of this survey, he has elicited some general remarks are not only applicable to Greek literature at the time, but they are applicable even to modern times. By the way, in the mid-30s of the last century, في أواسط الثلاثينات, going to the 40s, there was a group of critics by the name of the Neo-Aristotelians. مجموعة من النقاد الأمريكان عرفوا بالأرسطيين الجدد واتخذوا من جامعة فاندربلت الأمريكية مكانا لهم. يرأسهم R.S. Crane. R.S. Crane, and you know there are a group of critics spearheaded يعني ترأسهم R.S. Crane, along with whom there are Richard McKeown, Elder Elson, and there is a single woman by the name of Barbara Herrenstein. And Barbara Herrenstein, as a woman critic, is famous for two books, On the Margins of Discourse and The Logia. كيف ينهي الشعراء قصائدهم. And this is a very interesting topic. It used to be available in our library, but we lost it ever since, you see, long time ago. So, what is interesting for us to keep in mind is that, you know, what we are going to have, as far as Aristotle is concerned, is that, you know, how he has managed to refute accusations of poetry. All these ideas are amassed or lumped up, جمعت, into a book under the title Poetics. It was supposed to be in 2 volumes. The volume dealing with comedy was lost. What has survived is only the volume on a tragedy. Plato's accusations against poetry in a series of lectures known as Poetics. هذا المصطلح poetics له ترجمات عدة. فن الشعر، الشعرية, while some other translators prefer not to translate it but to transliterate. يعني لم يترجموه وإنما ترجموه حرفيا. والترجمة الحرفية نحتها أستاذنا المعروف عبد الواحد محمد تحت عنوان النقحرة، يعني نقل حرفي. والمعروف ان العربيه لا تشتغل على وفق الانجليزيه annexation suffixes and prefixes، وانما تشتغل على وفق الابدال والابدال او النحت والتجليد اذا ما ارادت العربيه ان تفك مصطلحا جديدا لم يكن له مجال في السابق، وبالتالي اصبحت العربيه على درجه عاليه من المرونه تؤهل متحدثها او كاتبها يلجا الى النحت والتجديد وما الى ذلك، والعمليات الاخرى اذا ما اراد ان ينحت. نحن لدينا الكثير من هذه الامثله، اجتماع اقتصادي وما الى ذلك من عمليات النحت الموجوده. هذا بطبيعه الحال يقودنا الى مساله اساسيه في علم اللغه، الا وهو ما يسمى باللكسيكال، يعني الفجوه المعجميه. والمعجميه خاصه لدى اولئك الذين يتبنون نظريه ادريان ليرر في كتابها اللي هو في الاصل والثلاثه للدكتوراه، يعني نظريه المجالات الدينيه. I don't like to burden you with so many ideas as far as linguistics is concerned. There will be a time for you when you embark upon studying. And this is actually the true nature of modern literary criticism. You cannot find your way into modern literary criticism without having a very solid background, apart from other disciplines. And now we are not only living through what is called interdisciplinarity, التداخل بين العلوم, we are going through transdisciplinarity, مجموعة من الأجهزة المفاهيمية تشتغل في ميدان تنقل إلى ميدان آخر وتشتغل. وهذا ما حصل في ميدان لساني مهم ألا وهو critical discourse analysis. Unlike egocentric, that is to say, awkward or strange treatise meant for general publication, the Poetics is an esoteric work. بتعبير آخر, يعني in other words, this work is not intended to address the general public. It's exclusively devoted to an elitist reader, رائد نخبوي, قارئ نخبوي. And this is what I gather, or I suspect, that this is the nature of all sophisticated works. وهذا ديدا كل الكتب المعقدة أنها تخاطب قارئا نخبويا, يعني أنها لا تخاطب هذا القارئ الكسول. He reads while he needs a lot of so much time to be to reading such kind of works. Keep in mind that we have two categories of literature that lives in a changing world and a literature that changes the world. علينا أن نعي أن هناك نوعين من الأدب, أدب يعيش في عالم متغير وأدب يغير العالم. As far as the second category, يعني لما تشارلز داروين نشر أصل الأرواح في عام 1859 انقسم الناس على أنفسهم, منهم من يؤمن بنظرية الارتقاء والتطور ومنهم من لا يؤمن. وبالتالي فإن أصل الأنواع لتشارلز داروين ينتسب إلى فئة من الكتب تسمى أو تسمى بالكتب التي أدت في تغيير العالم. There are so many words. Right. The world has become very much different. Publication, for example, there's work, a course in general linguistics. لم تعد الدراسات اللسانية كما عهدناها في القرن التاسع عشر بعد أن نشر, يعني ألف في 13 لكنه نشر في الفرنسية أو في الإنجليزية بال 19 اللي هو دروس في اللسانيات العام. وبطبيعة الحال هذا الكتاب سبق وأن ترجم إلى العراق, في العراق ترجمه إلى العربية في العراق الدكتور يائل يوسف, أستاذ اللسانيات في جامعة مصر, توفاه الله قبل سنوات عدة. وهناك ترجمة أخرى للسويدان. وبطبيعة الحال كثيرا من يعني مالك المطلبي أستاذ النحو في جامعة بغداد سبق وأن مقدمة ضافية لهذا الكتاب لترجمة ويل ونشره في العراق. One meant for private circulation to those who attended there, although it lacks the unity and coherence of Aristotle's other works. And you know, I'm sure that you have some ideas about the difference between coherence and cohesion. I don't like to get you involved, but you have to be aware of the difference. Yes. Although it lacks the unity and coherence of Aristotle's other works, it remains one of the most important critical influences on literary theory and criticism. That is to say, Aristotle's Poetics tended to be a seminal work. It has been exercising very formative influences on literary critics across the years, and I have already cited the example of the Neo-Aristotelians. يعرف أرسطين مجموعة من النقاد دخلوا من جامعة شيكاغو الأمريكية مقرا له, وبالتالي هم يسمون بالأرسطيين الجدد أو الشيكاغويين. كانت القراءات أو كانت المعلومات شحيحة, very rare, صحيحة عن هؤلاء. هناك بعض المعلومات التي وردت إلى القراء العراقيين والعرب في كتاب تحت عنوان الرؤية المسلحة، لكنه ترجم من خلاف هذا العنوان. Armored Vision by Stanley Hyman. Stanley Hyman, The Armored Vision, الرؤية المسلحة. And this is virtually a phrase that has been borrowed from Simon Taylor Coleridge. I don't know how far familiar you are with this poet. He is famous for his biography literaria. هناك كتاب مهم جدا على صعيد التنظير للشعر، الا وهو سيره ادبيه. سبق وان ترجم الى العربيه، ترجمه الكتان الى العربيه. It's not easy. It's not easy book to handle, you see, and it's not meant for you as a reader, a layman. يعني هو لا يخاطب القارئ العادي، وانما قارئ نخبوي متخصص في الدراسات النظريه والشعراء، وتحديدا الشعر الرومانسي. So you cannot find your way into romantic poetry unless you have certain ideas that it have been taken from Coleridge's Biographia Literaria. Mind you, chapter 14 in this book is labeled already as the Bible of literary criticism. الفصل الرابع من هذا الكتاب سبق وأن وسم بأنه إنجيل النقد. more than years, بأكثر من. Okay. So, to have further details on as poetics is concerned, definitely we have المحاضرة. هلا بيك، مرحبا. محاضرة يا عيني. ما أقول لك محاضرة دانتي. يا الله. Anyhow. Okay. So, what's the purpose behind writing poetics? It says Aristotle's purpose, however, this is at the bottom of the page, was not to formulate series of absolute rules for evaluating a tragedy. Yes, but to state the general principles of a tragedy. General principles of tragedy, as he viewed them in his time, while responding to many of Plato's doctrines and arguments. So Aristotle, as a theorist, is not an absolutist. Mind you, that the age we live in is highly characterized by relative values. القيم النسبية في العالم المعاصر. What may be acceptable to you may not be acceptable to someone else. But you are not حقك تفتئت على قيم الآخرين. So that's why values are relative. It depends on the position from which you look upon those values. And just and the message that we have to learn as far as literary theory is concerned is to nurture the spirit of tasammuh. And this is very much true of Aristotle's general. Even this title, the Poetics, reveals Aristotle's purpose, because in Greek, now he is going to tell you something about the etymology of the word. The word poetics means things that are made or crafted. Like a biologist, Aristotle dissects, analyzes to the single details. Dissect يعني يشرح. Tragedy to discover its constituent. So, under different circumstances, this? I've asked you to read some of Aristotle as they have come down to us through the translation. آخر وفي مكان آخر بإمكاني أن أكلفكم أن تقرأوا تاني من شعرية من فن الشعر لأرسطو باريس لتتعرفوا لتألفوا قسما من كما ورد easy things. نتتعلم نتعود على الأشياء. Okay. So let us start with Aristotle's definition of a tragedy. And you remember I've already referred to the idea that we have been introduced to definitions since our primary school days. But we haven't asked ourselves, what's the role of definition? What types and definitions? And what makes a definition successful or a failure? These are questions that you are supposed to search for. What is the etymology of the word definition? ما هو الجذر اللغوي لكلمة definition? Greek or Latin origin? What is the corresponding term for definition in English as far as our Arabic language? ما الذي يكافئ لغويا أو مفاهيميا التعريف الإنجليزية في العربية؟ Okay. Aristotle's complex definition, we have already said that Aristotle's ideas are not meant to address an ordinary reader. Is an elite complex definition. Tragedy, as found in the Poetics, has perplexed and frustrated many. Why? Because it's comparatively long and it has its own convoluted syntax. هذا التعريف لم يكن جهلا وإنما ينطوي على بنية نحوية ملتوية. And that's why it turns out to be a source of frustration. يعني مصدرا لإحباط الكثير من القراء. You are not required to dismantle it. يعني أنت غير مطالب أن تفكك هذا التحرير. Try to be very much concerned with what's available on the page, and that. Without having a close familiarity with Aristotle's ideas through the original, your ideas, as well as your understanding, will definitely be abortive and sketchy. But let us stick to what is available in front of us. Why should you accept little? Aristotle's complex definition of a tragedy, as found in the Poetics, has perplexed and frustrated. Let us read it. You see, with the help of this definition, definitely we would be more able, we would be empowered to dismantle, to debunk, okay, or to iron out the riddles that are latent in هذه الألغاز التي ينطوي عليها التعريف يمكن أن تفكك وتحل أخرى with the help of some other books, notably Deutsch's book. Deutsch's book, Approaches to Literature, where you are going to find the chapter and Plato's Dilemma. فصل في هذا الكتاب تحت عنوان محنة أو المحنة البلاتونية. Let's work hard if you'd like to be something. Leave a mark on the wall. عليك أن تشتغل بجد ودأب كي تترك علامة على الجدار. Easy. Nor is it handy or available to everyone. You have to work. A tragedy is then, this is not a time marker, it's a concluding marker. then ومن ثم هي ليست مؤشر زماني إنما مؤشر للاستنتاج. Tragedy is then the imitation of a noble and complete action, having the proper magnitude. It employs language that has been artistically enhanced by each of the kinds of linguistic adornment, applied separately in the various parts of the play. It is presented in a dramatic, not narrative form, and achieves, through the representation of pitiable and fearful incidents, the catharsis of such pitiable incidents. This is the definition of a tragedy. It involves so many ideas that have been tailored or dovetailed and known as Aristotle's definition of a tragedy. To embark upon a detailed and analysis of the definition definitely involves a lot of efforts, but let us stick to the point. What the basis of the definition could contribute or make as far as tragedy is concerned. It's quite difficult to understand philosophy because sometimes when philosophy is found a place, it may mean differently to times and places. We don't like to لا نريد أن نكون you come and revise it in the way you like. And it has all occurred with so many theories, and the problem arises. When you see, the definition is so inclusive, that it touches not only on what makes tragedy and tragedy, what are the basic factors that constitute tragedy, what type of language that is supposed to be used in a tragedy, and what function it can fulfill. See? The rubric of what is called catharsis. التطهير الأرسطي. التطهير الأرسطي. There will be a time in our lecture where we are going to touch upon catharsis and how does it resonate in the world. سيأتي يوم أو وقت نشير فيه إلى التطهير الأرسطي وكيف تصادى هذا المفهوم في الثقافة أو في الاهتمام العراقي أو العربي. الاهتمام العراقي أو العربي. I don't like to rush things, nor would I like, you see, the way it's yours. Okay. When placed in context, so basic lesson that you have to learn things into context. Say to contextualize. Okay? That's why there is the idea you have to historicize. عليك أن تؤرخن وعليك أن تضع في قرينة. We have to historicize, you see, context and to contextualize history. هنا أن نضع التاريخ في قرينة وأن نؤرخنه. This is the first lesson. I don't like to get you involved in so many days. How many types of context are there? Because I assume, however wrongly I am, however wrong, no matter how much wrong I am, you see, as far as context is concerned, and it plays a leading role as far as politics is concerned, contemporary politics, quite often, that things that have been wrenched out of their context. Wrench out يعني يخرج عن السياق. Okay? WRENCH. And after all, a wrench looks like a spanner with which you can untighten bolts. يعني هذه الآلة اللي تشبه المطرقة اللي تفتح بها ما يعجبك أن تفتح. So it becomes as a verb to wrench out. Okay. Never forget what I have already told you. Try to read having a dictionary. Otherwise, your vocabulary will be as limited whatever you would. Right. Let us have a wide range of vocabulary so that we'll get access and easy access to what we read. Keeping in mind various shades of meaning as far as the item is concerned. When placed in context, that this is a lesson. That is to say, you should not take things out of their context. Well, a very important lesson for you in writing your research papers. Try to borrow quotations and set them into their context. Otherwise, there will be intrusive. Will be intrusive. Okay. When placed in context with other ideas, in poetics, this complex definition highlights Aristotle's chief contributions to the criticism. On the basis of our understanding our general analysis of what makes a tragedy in terms of Aristotle's definition, perspective, we can arrive at his own contributions. Otherwise, he would have been forgotten or glossed over. بدون هذه الإسهامات ما كان لأرسطو أن يتجاوز امتحان التاريخ، ولم يقيض له أن يبقى كما هو، ولم تتح لنا فرصة أن نقرأه هنا في هذا المجال. وخلافا لهذا نساه التاريخ أو تم. He might be forgotten or he might be the different and the word about. A tragedy or a work of art, that's to say what is applicable to tragedy may be applicable or could be applicable to other literary genres الناس الأدبية وفق الفهم. Tragedy or a work of art is an imitation of nature. We have already dealt with the idea of how it has been worked out by Plato, culminating into what came to be called mimesis, المحاكاة أو النظرة في الأدب. That's a high form of art in exhibiting noble characters and noble deeds. Tragedy exposes noble characters and noble deeds. The act of imitation itself giving us a pleasure. وبطبيعة الحال في الحياة العادية نحن نحصل على متعتنا من خلال تقليدهم الآخرين وما أكثرنا. That is to say, the range of innovation or invention يعني هامش or margin of هامش الإبداع أو الابتكار يكون قليلا لأنها جبلنا على المحاكاة وبالمحاكاة نحصل على متعتنا. This is what, and this is an invitation. So imitation is not of a letter of a lower category as Plato presumed. It provokes or it incites pleasure into us. So it's a work of art. So the very basis of a tragedy is an imitation of nature, be it human nature or natural nature. يعني سواء محاكاة الطبيعة الفيزيائية أو الطبيعة البشرية. That reflects a high form of art in exhibiting noble characters and noble deeds. So there is no place in a tragedy for the and the mean character. with kings and so on and so forth. Act of imitation us. By the way, pleasure is a very thorny term. يعني اللذة أو المتعة مفهوم ينطوي على beginning with moving through Horus and ending up in 1973 with a French critic by the name of Roland Barthes. ناقد فرنسي تبنى مفهوم اللذة وتحدث عن اللذة في النصوص في كتاب اسمه لذة الناقد والمنظر ولا أريد الخوض في تفاصيل هذا. ناهيك عن سيغموند فرويد كتب كتابا عنوان Beyond the Pleasure Principle ما وراء مبدأ اللذة. So this is a focal point. A focal point, you see, when pleasure, ever since Aristotelian times, there is a place which has been allotted term. Apart from Jeremy Bentham الفيلسوف الإنجليزي في اللي يعرف النفعية utilitarianism. Okay? Again, and this is a problem. No, if you haven't studied background as far as the development of philosophy, you may not enjoy nor would you understand what's going on. This is the nature of criticism. So many tributaries of it will flow in the river of the criticism. And these tributaries involve so many disciplines, be it linguistics, philosophy, economics, anthropology, psychology, sociology, and so on and so forth. But let us be satisfied or content with what is lived. Number two, art possesses form. That is tragedy, unlike life, has a defined beginning and middle. Every literary work should carry these basic or these basic categories. And I'm sure that you have already gone through a situation where you don't know where to begin and how the beginning is related to the end.